That's what I was waiting for. It is Friday, early Friday, 1:13. That means we running late for it's time we talk. Sometimes you got to talk the conversation out on the other end to get it right. We're going to be bringing in Mac Hudson today. As you know, Mac Hudson is my co-host. Really done took over the show because he do the show on Wednesdays and Fridays, 1 to 3. So I am officially welcoming you to the show. And we'll be talking to one of the reps that I consider putting in work down there in Boston. We'll be talking to Chynah Tyler. And we'll be learning something today. So you know this is my intro theme song, and then this is my in and out, Nipsey Hussle, R.I.P. to Nipsey. I want to try to get to Mac and his team, find out what's going on out there. So while I do this, you just vibe to that. It's time we talk. Bad boy, good talk. Mac Hudson, we with you today. Hey, Mac. Let's see if we can get Mac in here. Hey, Mac.
I'm here.
He's here. He's here.
I'm in the building.
My brother is in the building officially. How you feeling today?
Oh, man. Great. Great, man.
All's good?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know, especially on this occasion where I'm sitting there with my sis.
Well, we're going to stop all, you know what we're going to do? You know, it's time we talk. I'm going to stop all of this here, man, because we want to hear you clearly, man. So welcome to the show. This is Mac Hudson. As you know, my brother coming home 33 years later, man, and right to business, PLS. He's going to tell you all about it, right to business. And as I was saying, we got Chynah Tyler with us today. I know that much. But M, take your show. This is my co-host. He actually took over. Mac Hudson, you are on live. Talk to us, my brother.
Oh, man, I ain't taking over, man. We doing this together, man. That's what it is about.
Oh, always together, man. But he got a thing of taking over. We got years together. We've been together since we was kids in that dungeon. But anyway, let's get into this. Let's get into this.
All right, okay, no doubt. Listen, man, I'm feeling great today, man. You know, in particular because I'm here with my sister, you know, the Honorable State Rep Chynah Tyler. She's in the building. Come on, give it up. You know what I mean? Say hello.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Mac. How you doing?
How you
been?
Welcome to the show, Chynah. Let me say welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate y'all inviting me. I wouldn't be any other place.
Pleasure.
And I was just sharing with her how we had, you know, her aid Wednesday. Big Steph in the building, right? You know, sharing with us, man, some of his insights and, you know, his aspirations and, you know, some of the talent that he has that he's been, you know, giving us in the community at the same time through the music, you know, and his contributions through his community, through the community work that he does. So, I mean, I wanted to kind of start off with that platform, really just like, Chynah, just tell us, how did you find these young folks? You know.
Yeah, so that's a good question. You know, everything that we do we do it for the future, like to build our future, to make sure that our future is sustainable. And so, you know, coming into this platform, I wanted to make sure that, you know, that we don't forget the next generation. I was young here, growing up in Boston, and oftentimes, you know, you feel a little bit of a disconnect with the generation before you and maybe two generations before you. But in order for us to be successful, we have to stick together. And so sharing information and making sure you're upbringing the next generation is important. So I sought out a bunch of youth. My first campaign, I had different parts of my campaign, but they ran a really great show. And Steph was leading that charge, and he did an amazing job and helped me get to where I am today. And I'm still here 7 years later. So I'm grateful for them just being willing to trust me to guide them through a civic engagement project, which turned into a lifetime of greatness for, you know, our community.
Shout out to Steph. Shout out to Steph. Okay.
Shout out to Steph.
All right. So let's talk about that a little bit. You know, give us some background. Who is Chynah Tyler?
Chynah Tyler. So I am a mom. I'm a sister. I'm the best sister, so shout out to my brothers because I know they're probably going to be listening too. I'm a family member. I'm a community leader. I am a young woman born and raised here in the city of Boston who had access to opportunities, really a lot of them lucky opportunities that I took, and that led me to where I am today. I've had the opportunity to go to some really great schools in the area to help me, sharpen my skills when it comes to education. That led me to college. I went to Northeastern University, graduated, and majored in criminal justice and law policy and society, and was able to really apply a lot of what I learned into the workforce and what I'm doing today. I started working in the prison industry. I worked for the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a while, helping folks that were coming home, that were nearing release, to get employment, housing, and community support. And that's kind of where my career really kind of launched off from there, working in that space and doing that work.
Okay, yeah. Wow. That was a mouthful right there, right? I mean, and I just want to kind of like step back and kind of peel back some of the layers of that, because I think it kind of gives you more insight than the average person, right? I mean, you come up also with family members that have been incarcerated, right? Me as one of them. And also, you worked in the federal bureau system, which then gives you another perspective on the many things that happens with reentry. And let's talk about a little bit about what motivates you to do what you do.
Yeah, so I work at a pre-release style center, again, helping guys. It was a male facility, so helping guys get employment, housing, and just really get back on a good foot and just get access to opportunities after being incarcerated for 10, 20, 30 years. Something that, many of our listeners today, and all too well, it's really hard to just get back out there. It's hard to be in an environment, a new environment, after you've been away from that environment and things are ever changing. I mean, transportation, technology, all these things are changing. And so when you are faced with being back, on the streets and being back into your community, it's really hard to make that transition a lot of times. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, because people who happen to be incarcerated also too is an illness that my family faced as well at a point in time. And so I do whatever I can to make sure that folks get a real opportunity at a second chance, because you served your time and that was your punishment. It shouldn't be a second punishment, once you get home. And so it was a very interesting experience, I would definitely say, but really what motivates me today, that was my first job out of college, actually helping, folks in that manner and doing that job. And that's what really actually motivates me today, because there were a lot of guys that were really great guys, and women too, that had great credentials. They were very motivated. They had a lot of support, but they just couldn't get access to opportunity. Why? Because they had a Corey. So again, if you serve your time, you should, that should be it, right. But you have this thing that's kind of lingering over your head, or you just chip on your shoulder, your Corey, that anytime you go into a space, you apply for a job or want an opportunity, that's going to hold you back from being able to fully access that for many different things. And so that really motivated me to make sure that I get to a space where I could tear down barriers and to make sure that folks that are formerly incarcerated get a real opportunity at a second chance. And we've been creating a lot of those and opportunities, and I'm really excited about them. And I'm really big on reentry today.
And so let's talk about, what have you been creating in that regard? We can't just let that go. I mean, we need to know. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, well, the reality of it is that there are a lot of people that come home and they have these amazing business plans. So shout out to everybody who has a business plan, but make sure that you can fund that plan is what I'm going to tell you. You have to work. You have to get into workforce, even if it's just for a little bit, so you can get your launch until you make your first M. Then, you're going to have to work somehow, some way. So figure out what you're skilled at, and you can do that 9 to 5. But when you're home, you can focus on your business and your individual plan. And again, a lot of folks aren't getting those 9 to 5 opportunities because of the Corey. And so in my job as a state rep, I do two things. I balance a $48.3 billion budget every year. And we also write and pass legislation with the help of advocates and community support. And some of the things that we've been able to create legislatively and also through the budget have been able to provide those opportunities. So for example, with the budget, we were able to fund some pre-apprentice programs for folks to actually get into the trades and that career field makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of people out here doing a lot of things that don't make sense because your career is gonna hinder you from really being able to reach your fullest trajectory in any given industry. But that industry, it's Corey friendly, and you can kind of go to the top. You can be a foreman, and you can lead your own crew. You can move up and really make a lot of money and be able to fund your small business plan.
Right.
We, established a couple of industries since I've been in office in 2017. Like the cannabis industry was a big one. And so I know this is a kind of new phenomenon, but I'm definitely going to encourage folks to look at the business and what's happening. It's a $30 billion industry, and that's within the first quarter of this year, 2022.
Hold on, 30 billion?
30 billion, yeah, 30 billion.
How much I need of that?
Yeah, it's a $30 billion industry. And so what we were able to do with some of that $48.3 billion was to be able to seed a program that is the first in the nation jails to jobs program to allow for folks that have been incarcerated with any type of marijuana infraction on your case or your arrest log, that you can get into a program to then put you into the marijuana industry. And it's not just the workforce, it's small business too. So we're investing a lot into people being independent as well. And so just opening up any door when it comes to the workforce is super important because, again, I know folks have, amazing ideas and have these big granular opinions, but you got to start small, and you got to remember to stay humble and make sure that you hit the ground running, and let you say, drop your bucket off and start digging with your shovel.
And it's interesting.
Hey, just so you know, Chyna.
Hold on.
He said
you back from a smoke break.
No. Listen. He said he's gonna have a couple people, right? So on this show, he didn't say my name. He said Dime. That's our personal message. I wasn't even paying attention to that. I'm listening to you, and he's like, okay, Dime, and I'm going, damn, I ain't heard that in years. Nobody else says that but him. That's our prison talk. So I'm like, who's he talking? What is he saying? I apologize, my people.
My bag,
just so the people out here know that the bad boy Good Talk, besides being Darrell Jones, an innocent man, he's also known as Dime. And we'll figure that one out down the line. That was a prison thing. All right, all you, M. All right, I got it now. When I hear the dime, that's the alert. Go ahead, Chyna.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. When we was just recently at an award ceremony over at Black Markets, when that was this Wednesday, right?
This past Wednesday, yes. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and with Eon, can you talk to us a little bit about your work with them? And
yeah, so
where was it, M? Just so the people know, where was it, Chyna?
It was at the Black Market on Washington Street.
Right. Tell them what the Black Market is, because I want people to be informed. That's probably why they make it one time, didn't make it the other.
Well, what is the Black Market?
It's a marketplace where they sell Black-owned items. If you're interested, you should definitely pop in. But the EON is an advocacy group. It's called Equitable Opportunities Now, EON. And pretty much they advocate to be able to ensure that the cannabis industry is equitable. And they hosted an award ceremony, and to my surprise, I was honored as one of the cannabis equity champions for this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And a lot of that is due to the work that we do to make sure that this industry is equitable. So not only are we hitting it with making sure that people who are incarcerated for anything, marijuana, whatever, or just incarcerated at all, like you literally have to have been incarcerated to get into this program. Like, it's not really heard of anywhere, but we try to make sure that folks really have something that's really culturally sensitive and Corey sensitive to, what they have going on. But we also too do a lot with making sure that we're investing in folks that actually have a small business plan to get into the cannabis industry. And so we've invested a lot of seed money into companies where you can get grants to kind of do whatever you want to do. It's not just owning a dispensary that is like a retail store. You can make Rice Krispie treats. You can make drinks, you can make cakes, you can make pies, you can make packages, the shipping and handling packages. You can do a lot with this industry. And so what we try to do is create an opportunity for folks that want to get into the industry also to be in it as a small business owner. And so a big part so we passed a big reform bill last year, and it changed. So we established the industry in 2017, and we needed to make a bunch of changes because pretty much Black folks weren't getting into the industry. And that's just what it was. And so one of the bigger pieces that I was responsible for ushering was ensuring that we now have a social equity fund. And it pretty much, so cannabis is not legal on the federal level, so you can't really go to the bank and get $1 million loan and open up a store down Dudley or in Nubian Square. You can't do that.
Right.
So where are you going to get your money from? But if you're formerly incarcerated, particularly for a cannabis crime, you should be the first person that gets the opportunity to open up a store in Roxbury, for example, right?
Right.
So where are you going to get your money from? So what we did was that we established a social equity fund, which will allow for you to get grants to be able to help open up your store, open up your shipping and handling, or open up your growing site, should you not have the capital to be able to do so. And so this is a $30 billion industry. So at first they had it at like 5 or 10%, 5% or whatever of the money that is made in this industry to go into that fund to help people who are formerly incarcerated and or disproportionately impacted in any way to get money to open up their stores or do whatever they want to do in the cannabis industry. But we fought really hard to up that number. If you know me, you know I'm really big on making sure that we can do more of what we have.
Right.
And so we fought hard and we got that percentage up to 15%.
Okay.
So 15% of that money is going to be going into this fund and folks will be able to apply. So apply, y'all, apply.
Right. So, and speaking along those lines now, I mean, just thinking about the whole idea of equity, I also noticed that a lot of legislation in which you present has to deal with along the same line, like equity. Oh
yeah, absolutely.
So I want you to kind of talk about why, you proposed the cost for phone bill, and what's that all about, and what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, so I mean, a prison sentence is exactly that. It should also be everything around the situation or the ecosystem of being incarcerated shouldn't also be a punishment. I mean, I think that, I've seen that. I don't think that commissary is a little bit more expensive than actually living out here on the street, if you ask me.
That's a fact.
And that is concerning to me because if you happen to be incarcerated and you're trying to get right, you're trying to do right, you're trying to, make sure that you get ready for the day that it's your turn to go home and walk out of those gates and out of those, walk out of those facilities, that you have the ability to be able to do so and that you're set up for greatness. And a big part of that is economics and being able to make sure that you're, in your support system. Your family, you don't see anybody incarcerated. Your family and people that are your loved ones that support you should be in contact with you to help you get to the space of rehabilitating so that when you get your second chance, you can take it and run with it and do whatever it is that you want with it. But not being able to access those folks is a problem. You're literally breaking someone's support system and putting them in a space where they're pretty much fighting a fight with their hands tied behind their back.
Right.
So the least we could do is allow for folks to be able to contact their loved ones and contact their lawyer and contact their whoever it is to be able to get support to get to wherever they need to be once they go home. And that's just not a reality right now. And then so that was how we got into it. When it became more of a concern, I started raising my eyebrows a little bit, was about how much money was being made on the back end. So, the math behind it all, and I know you're a numbers dude, so I'm going to talk about the numbers a little bit because we always talk numbers, that industry.
And just so our listeners understand that in Massachusetts state prisons, we have to pay for the phone calls. The family members have to pay for every call that comes through. And so this bill was targeting the price range of what that cost should be by eliminating all costs, right, and allowing free access to the phone system. So this is what we're talking about now.
Yeah, so the whole goal is to be able to exactly reduce the barriers to making sure that folks have access to their support system, and how we're going to do that is so that bill. It got into a little bit of a rut. Pretty much, we had an issue with the governor where he attached it to a bill that was really hard to pass, and then it kind of crumbled the whole bill. But the point is that this industry is a really big industry, and whenever they feel like they want to make more money, they will increase the fees. So, for example, if I were to put it in layman's terms a little bit to folks that are listening that may be outside the wall, your phone bill every month should be in between like $40 and $80 pretty much. If you had a cell phone bill that was charged at the rate to maybe contacting your folks 20 minutes a week for that particular company that has the contract to provide telephone calls, your phone bill would be $700 every month just for talking on the phone for 20 minutes a week.
Wow.
So that kind of gives you a little bit of idea of how expensive this is.
Right.
And not only do your families pay for it, and it's a high fee. It's kind of an unregulated market as to how they control the fee. So they can say, hey, now we have a fee for whatever it is, and then now you got to pay that if you want to talk to your loved one, and you don't really have a choice. And we can't really have that happen. And we really want folks to be able to be well once they leave home. So we're trying to fight for free telephone calls. If you want to learn more about the campaign, please reach out. I know there are a lot of folks that may be, on the other side of the wall, unfortunately, that are listening. And how we're going to do that is not just making the physical phone free. A lot of folks are getting tablets now, and a lot of folks are having more access to, just individualized technology, that happen to be incarcerated. And so we're looking to put the phone system on the actual tablet so that it doesn't cause an issue behind the walls with actually who has phones. Somebody been on the phone all day, you talking on the phone all day free. It sounds like a recipe for disaster. So we want to do it, and we also too want to safely implement it as well so that it makes sense. So I'm excited about that.
All right. And also the bill just didn't include free phone calls. It included other things too, right? Yeah,
so phone calls, that expanded. Before was just page me, just beat me. Now it's a telephone call. Now it's a video chat. So the whole telecommunications piece will be free.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what she means by that specifically is that they have video visits back there. And the video visits, as it stands now, the video calls have to be paid for, $5 for 20 minutes. And I know in some other states, they get longer than 20 minutes for their $5, but that's another topic for another time, right?
So that's the point, is that it's uncontrolled. But and what's funny about it, y'all, is that it's the same company that has the contracts in majority of these states. So
and they're getting rich.
They do whatever they want to do.
And they're getting rich.
Yeah.
And so kind of looking at that through that lens, right? It's like, how do we restore some of that equity back into the community which is ill affected, the Black and brown community? How do we do that? And I realize one of the ways is by doing this, because then, if this passes eventually, and we hope that it will, that, it'll allow families that were putting that cost to actually now perhaps put that money aside to do other things, invest equity into the home, right? But how do we look at other dimensions of incarceration in that perspective, right? And to kind of divest and then reinvest into the Black community as you see it?
So the reentry piece is really, really big. So when I think of, just being incarcerated, there's a whole spectrum of 4 different areas that I see of how someone was led to incarceration. So there's a preventative piece where, something happened to be going on at home or in your community or whatever, and you happen to, be at the wrong place at the wrong time, or be, arrested for something that you may have been innocent for or something. That's the whole piece that we got to work on with our youth today, and making sure that they don't go down the school to prison pipeline. Then there's a second piece where it's like, okay, so once you're in the system, how does the system treat you, and how do you get out of the system? And a lot of folks are really having trouble with just dealing with the system because they don't really know how to navigate the law. They don't know the court system. They don't know what resources are available to them. They don't know their rights. So that's the second piece, is once you're in the system, then what? Third piece is, okay, now you're incarcerated. If you happen to be sentenced to jail for whatever it is, how do you navigate that system? How do we make sure that we invest in that industry to make sure that when you do release from there, that you're well? And then the fourth piece is, once you are home, then now what? How do we make sure that you never go back to, either one of those pieces or whatever? So how do I see that happen, and how we can reinvest in our community is on all 4 of those different pillars. I mean, the first pillar, we can make sure that we invest in our schools, and our schools are culturally sensitive to our kids, and our kids want to be in school. I mean, you're under 18, your only job is to be in school. So we got to make sure that education, that academic piece, that not even the academic piece, but the whole after school, everything is right. If you happen to, be, arrested, we got to make sure that our social service system is correct. So that way, if you're having to come across a DCF or whatever it is, your parents or, a situation is happening in your home and you're in the system, then how is the court treating you? How do you understand what's going on? Do you know your rights? Are you strong enough to be able to get out of the system? And then, third piece, once you're incarcerated, how do we invest in making sure that this is a rehabilitative system? It's called as far as the state is concerned, the Department of Corrections, and we see the word correction to be parallel to the word rehabilitation, not the other way around,
right.
or not at all.
Right.
And that's the stigma that it has, and that's what it's been, and we need to change that. And then once you come home, how do we make sure that housing is affordable? How do we make sure that your query, that if you want to apply to a job in whatever industry, that you can get in and your query is not going to be affected? And then once you've shown that that you're fine, you're good, and then you can move on, then how do you expunge your record and get rid of that query piece? Like that's like the fifth piece to this whole spectrum. And so we can invest on many different fronts, and we do, and it's a really difficult effort, but showing up is 90% of the job, so I'm always going to make sure I show up for y'all.
Absolutely. Okay, all right. Now I just wanted to kind of like shift gears now to like some of the stuff that's happening behind the walls presently, where we know that there's a great race issue that's happening between officers that administrators that cannot necessarily identify with the black and brown folks who are incarcerated, and it impacts the way that services are provided to that community behind the wall. And I know that you, on several occasions, have come to those facilities and to inquire into that, right, and to kind of figure out what needs to be done. And so I wanted to just get some of your views about that, about those experiences. I know you went to the Max and you saw some of the when the brutality aspect of that happened up there, and you went up there to investigate those concerns. And so I'm just looking for some insight. Like how do we deal with that in the Massachusetts state prisons?
There's no one answer to that question. But if I could just stay on the same, theme of what we're talking about today, workforce and development, and making sure that you are creating culturally sensitive industries. That's just kind of like saying, I've been to school all my life and only had one black teacher, but I'm a black student. Like, we have to make sure that, the workforce, when it comes to the Department of Corrections, is equitable, and especially up the leadership ladder. And that's in every industry. When you see a lot of the people that are at the entry level, the front desk people, the entry-level workers are all people of color, but as you go up in the ranking file situation, you realize that the people that are decision-making about people who are predominantly people of color that are happening to be incarcerated they don't look like the people that they're making decisions on. So, as a leader in the state, I have to make sure that I work with the department, and also to hear from folks as to how they're receiving, the correction or whatever it is on the back end, the customer, and make sure that we do whatever we can to meet folks in the middle to ensure that folks are safe and that they feel like they, are actually moving forward with the progress, with the person that they want to be once they leave those walls. And so I would say definitely making sure that there are more people of color when it comes to the Department of Corrections and just kind of working as a correctional officer. That's a really hard job to get. And a lot of the prisons and a lot of the facilities are 2-3 hours from where any, most predominantly people of color live. And so it's like, how do you make that job a job that someone would want to drive from Boston or drive from Springfield or drive from Lawrence or drive from Worcester to want to be? So it's a very difficult kind of thing to do, but we're working on it, and we'll hopefully try to do better in that space.
No, and it's interesting because, as I listen to you, I think of like just the subculture that exists in prison, and, and I'm quite sure that, the black and brown officers experience, and I'm not saying, I shouldn't say that like I'm speculating, because I know this to be true, that when it comes to promotions or elevations up the rank, that their experience, and also, some...
Yeah, that's every industry, everywhere. It's becoming a problem, but what I would say is that, making sure that, as leaders rise, and this is not just for this industry, this is just in general, like as leaders rise, that you support your leaders in wherever space you are, because it's really hard, being in a leadership role and being a person of color is very difficult. So, yeah. And so like, and not always like look at like a lot of your solution based to kind of like, how do we attack that by taking the power away or the economic sense out of it, right? And so
I wanted to kind of hear like how you juxtapose those two things together. Like how do we take that? How do we look at what's happening where Black and brown people are being impacted behind the wall at an alarming rate, which is then detrimental to the Black community in which they're returning to, the Black and brown community in which they're returning to, right? How do we divest in a way that economic makes sense to prevent or to encourage administrators to kind of take the concerns of the Black and brown people seriously, you know, and to make sure that they're getting the services?
Well, how you can do that within the Department of Corrections and the House of Corrections as well is through programming. Like, I can't tell you that right now we have an accurate pulse on what programs are being administered, how culturally sensitive they are, not even program, what academic services there are. Are they meeting people where they are and actually pushing people to the fullest trajectory? A lot of that programming and what people are doing while they're incarcerated every day, that is a big issue. And so right now I'm actually working on a commission to be able to address issues around programming, and like a lot of that stuff isn't measured correctly. And then on top of that, you have the system working the system saying, hey, if you're classified like me, you're a 30-year-old woman, you're young, you're this, you're that, I will get all these points just based off of just being me. Mm-hmm. And if I graduated college and I happen to go to prison after I went to college, then I can't get access to more college courses, or to if I want to get my master's because I got all these points because I was classified because I was 30 years old. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a big issue when it comes to programming and how it's done and how it's administered, mm-hmm. and who accesses those programs. So if we were to economically invest and be able to change things in a more domino effect, I think it's through kind of figuring out what type of programming we have, figuring out how we can fix what issues there are, and figuring out what the inmates' needs are, and create programming around that. And then we'll see better results. There have been a lot of programs, and I'm actually a little bit disappointed that have been in there that I was actually proud to be able to see, and proud to see kind of just kicked off and going, and they were either defunded and or not supported, and it's becoming a problem. And I know that some folks in the department try, but we just have to do a better job of making it a little bit more systematic, so that when people who happen to be incarcerated, that they know what to expect. You're talking about somebody who happened to went through something so traumatic as being taken away from their family, being incarcerated, and you're trying to get them to be back to where they need, to be ready to be released. Mm-hmm. And they don't even have the common courtesy to know what to expect with the programming. That's the basic issue right there. You're not creating stability for someone, so it's a problem, and we're looking forward to fixing it for sure.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, and I know I always love hearing your views, and I love the way that your mind works, because I think that, for years, I mean, even from the civil rights era, and where the focus was solely about, integration in a way that didn't have an economic engine to it, right? And now we kind of look at transformation, some decades later, and where the emphasis has been about economics, real equity, what does that mean? And just as of recent, because, this has not been something, it's been talked about in the Black community, but not really actualized in the way that has been probably in the last couple of years, when we really look at it. So I think it's to me, a very important transition to recognize, right, and to understand that whatever solution that we're creating, it has to be a holistic approach. Right.
It really does. We really want folks to be well when they walk out of them doors, and there's nothing like getting out there and crashing. Mm-hmm. That is the most traumatic thing I've ever witnessed someone go through, and that's me from the outside. So I can't imagine what it feels like when you're the person that actually has to go through that are facing just unnecessary hardship when you release, and you had all this time to be able to get the support you needed once you release, and if somebody fails you in that on that journey in any way, it could really, really hurt somebody mentally, socially, physically, whatever. So we want to do what we can to make sure that people are well.
Okay, so I just want to transition one last time.
All right.
And this is more so about what's happening in and around the community today, right? There's been like an onslaught of violence happening quite regularly.
Been waiting on that. I'm an avid listener of your show, Mac.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And we had, just a young lady a couple of days ago just got shot in the head, was killed.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and then we had a couple of shootings that occurred just recently. And it seemed like, I guess my question is that for years, and I often wondered this while I was in prison, is that all this money was being funneled to these institutions that are programs or places where they said that they were doing this work to kind of offset the violence. And I'm just wondering, why haven't we been able to see that concretely in the lowering of violence? It seems like this has been an ongoing situation. Is the wrong players not involved? I mean, what is happening from your perspective?
Well, first of all, I want to say my condolences to every family who's ever lost somebody to gun violence here in the city of Boston and anywhere in the world. Whoever's listening, my condolences to families. It's a very traumatic thing to be able to experience. And, unfortunately, my family had experienced that at a point in time, and so has Jalil's family and anybody who I know's family more than likely had experienced, trauma from gun violence. So I would like to start with that. But the issue kind of derives from, again, I spoke about 4 pillars of someone actually, before you got incarcerated, dealing with the courts, while you're incarcerated, and then on release. That's kind of how I define what the criminal justice system is. And a big part of why there's a lot of violence and why I feel like there's a lot going on in our community is because that first pillar isn't right. Our schools aren't right, like just the environment for our youth. Like we're not doing we can do a little bit better at setting our youth or our next generation up for greatness. And if you get to a point where you feel like you have to pick up a gun, at that point, I see it as you're in the survival tactic. Now, the weaponization and the negativity behind it and the violence and if you're robbing somebody, whatever it is, like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the point in which a young woman or a young man decides that he or she wants to pick up a gun and do something with it. We failed that's an issue, and that kid was failed. And our children should never get to the point of where they want to feel like they have to pick up a gun. And so we got to do whatever we can to make sure that our students have whatever access to whatever opportunities that they need to not feel that feeling, because once they feel that feeling, it's a slippery slope.
Right, but at the same time, like, where is the response from the black men?
There have been some amazing responses from some amazing black men here in the city of Boston and throughout the Commonwealth. So I want to say, give a big shout out to all the black men leaders, including yourself, including many men out there. I won't start name dropping because we'll say, why you shot me out, whatever. But shout out to all y'all for doing what you do. But I want to focus on how last year we passed a really big police reform bill. And a big part of that bill, I put in language to be able to establish a state Black Men and Boys Commission, which will they'll meet and they'll come up with some things that are very important that disproportionately impact black men, and they will advise the government onto how they can spend some of that $48 billion or write legislation and pass bills to be able to address issues that have historically disproportionately impacted black men and black boys. And so hopefully that addresses a lot of the issues that we're seeing.
Okay, all right. So I just want to now switch gears over to Jalen and get our brother in on this conversation.
Oh,
Jalil, excuse me for butchering up your name, bro. Good brother. All right, so why don't you introduce yourself, brother, and your position.
My name is
Jalil. Brother Jalil.
Appreciate it. My name is Jalil. I work for Rep. Tyler as a legislative aide. And basically what I do a lot of legislative work in the State House, and then we work in Roxbury working with the community. So that's really what I do on a everyday basis, whether it's on the weekends, or on the normal 9 to 5 Monday through Friday schedule.
Okay, so your job never stops.
Never.
This whole thing never stops.
Okay, well, let's talk about who You are.
All right.
You know, tell us a little bit about yourself.
What can I say? I grew up Mattapan, playing basketball my whole life. I'm a child of an immigrant Jamaican mother and an immigrant African father. So my parents were both born in Jamaica and Africa, and they came there when they was kids. So I have a very cultural upbringing. And then I've always had a thing for black people. So like when Trayvon Martin died in 2012, that really like shook my whole life and my whole perspective, because at one point I thought racism was just gone, and I thought that this world was just like a quote unquote perfect place. And seeing him like die the way that he did, I just knew that things weren't that, like something was terribly wrong for a kid to die like that and nothing happened. So just from there, I just changed my mind to trying to impact the lives of people that look like me and trying to bring a different way of getting the things that people in my community care about and like. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And how old are you?
24.
24. See, here we go. Another one.
What?
Another young up and coming.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying, Darrell?
This is young in
We got
I'm listening closely. We got another one coming, right?
we got another one up
Necessary.
and coming.
Necessary.
That's right. I like this. I like that. Okay. All right. So I want to get your perspective on a couple of things, if you don't mind. I mean, you know, from a young black male, grew up in the city, saw the things, experienced some trauma in and around the violence. What do you think about the recent violence that's been happening?
I think it's I mean, I know the numbers are down from last year, but like it's just happening at a rate that it's like just shootings are just happening at a rate that it's actually kind of like very fast, and then it's at a rate where it's supposed to be slowing down because we're about to enter into winter time. So a lot of people are not really outside, but then it's like it's picking up after summer.
Right.
It's just like a weird thing to sit down and think about. But like, I definitely think it's like getting worse, because then you see mothers being killed. And like, when has that ever been a thing? That's
Right.
okay.
Right. Now, see, that's what I'm talking about. When has that ever been, what's up? You know, like, when has that been part of the G code? I ain't never heard of that being part of the G code.
Never. Supposed to be no women, no children.
Okay, I thought I was the only one that knew that. All right.
One is too many.
Right.
Definitely too many.
You know, it's
Right. No, absolutely. But when we're talking about street philosophy, right, and that ideology, you know, that's the way we raise it. And it's interesting to hear our brother, right, who is generationally removed from me, right, to still have that, you know, to have that understanding of that's what it, you know, that's the way. So that means that we're devolving, right, and at a rate that's really now beyond detrimental. It's done got to the point where our youngins are moving, and not just our youngins, but all of those who are engaged in that type of belief system. It's almost savagery. You know what I'm saying?
So, hey,
yeah.
it's like the way that I look at it, and I try to explain to a certain amount of people, is that if you can kill someone look like you can kill yourself.
Absolutely.
So, like, just to put it in perspective of that, it's like you're just killing another entity of you in a world that's already killing you. So it's just like you're doing their job for them at that point in time.
And I just want to be clear, when we're not advocating violence, right, we're not
Absolutely
saying that, a black man killing another black man is somehow acceptable in the street life. We're just talking about the street life ethics as we knew them, right, and how that subculture exists and the philosophies that are associated with it, and how there seems to be a great deviation from that philosophy and ideology today. And, you know, that can't really be kind of like crammed into, well, that's the way the young generation is doing it now, right? No, it's really, that's the way the street generation is doing that, right? That includes everyone that's included, because even in their silence, those who don't subscribe to that, in their silence, they're condoning it, right? And so we have to, always hold everyone accountable that's engaged, because when I was engaged, if something improper went down like that, I'd be the first to say, yo, we don't do stuff like that. And that's not how we get down. You know what I mean? And that would send a effect on everyone that was coming after me or that was in that arena. And we don't even see that happening today, right? It's like, today it's like, no one cares. We don't even care enough to say, yo, that's not what's up.
Well, what I would say to that is that we as an adult, we have to take the responsibility and say that, we're not reaching our youth. So what could we do differently to be cool? What could we do to tap into their brain? What could we do to, to engage them a little bit more? Jalil and I, we visit schools, youth centers, after schools, and we connect with the kids all the time, and they look forward to seeing us, and they're very open to talking to us. There's a lot of issues going on in schools. They call us to be able to address issues. So it's really about is an adult relating to the child, and there's a lot of adults out here not relating to children.
Sounding like Darrell. It's not a children's problem.
It's right. We don't have a kid's problem. We have an adult's problem. 100%. And Chyna, I got a couple of things I want to run by you, but we're gonna take that on, right? But while Mac is talking about that, and the brothers talking about that, I would like to see us do something about that. Maybe a Zoom. There's a way that we can bring the parents on collectively, right, and introduce them to what they don't know. You know what I mean? And show them what, just like music. They're not listening to that music, right? So they don't really know what's guiding their kids.
Yeah, the whole issue around the drill rap, that is outrageous.
So they got to be updated. They got to be formed. You know what I mean? It has to be brought to the format.
So Jalil. Now I'm always cautious because I always think I'm going to say his name wrong.
You got it.
So getting back, and I just wanted to just kind of like, I know I kind of jumped ahead real quick, and I wanted to kind of go back a little bit and just what made you get into, how did you find yourself in this position? Walk us through, some of your history in that regard.
Can I rephrase it and ask Jalil just, with mine as well? My thing is, what made you go the right way, young blood? You know what I mean? Versus, there's something had to click and make you say, I'm going this way. And that's what I want to know, because brothers need to pick up on why you are in the position you're in and why you grinding. So I just wanted to add that in.
Okay, so let's get both of them in that sequence.
All right, so coming up, I had family members that was in the streets. So I used to see my family members go to jail from very, very young. So I was very conscious of going to Dorchester Courthouse and seeing family members there. So I always knew from a very young age I wanted to do something totally different that I seen everybody else doing, which was going to jail. So I'm like, I'm not going to jail. So I made sure that I had a conscious thing in my mind of I'm just going to play ball and then use whatever comes with this to get my family out of our situation. But I also wish I had someone telling me that there's many different things than just playing ball. Even though ball saved my life, and I never would go back and change anything, because that just this little orange round thing gave me purpose. And seeing Allen Iverson on TV and LeBron James, that gave me a different avenue of wanting to be like that.
Okay.
And I can relate to that. And then based on the job aspect, one of my mentors, he go by the name of Corey Allen. He's one of my biggest I have to say inspirations in my life, that I can go call at any moment of time. And he grew up in the same type of environment I grew up in, Mattapan, and to see him get into the educational field, and that's where I met him at. And he just stuck with me from when I was 15, 16, and then him and Rep Tyler have a very great relationship, and they do a couple business on the side. So just telling him that I needed some help, that I wanted to go do something different and just continue on that path of being different. So then he just put me in this situation that's I never thought that I would ever be in or be around, or just nothing. I thought that I would just be on my activism thing from social media or just on my own work.
Right.
But then I'm working I'm still doing that, but then now I'm working behind the scenes, and I'm really making actual change, and not just me just talking. I'm actually doing things that I see on TV changing.
Right.
And people don't even know that that came from literally my bedroom.
Right.
So
right.
Doing that and then just seeing all that type of stuff change is just remarkable. And to be able to tell this to my nieces and my nephews, that's still I really want to help get like
I
further
think
than
what's
me.
inviting is that you said that you had somebody that stepped up for you. Was that that's an older brother? Tell us a little bit about the brother, that stepped up for you, because I'm honored that you found somebody, man, that would do that. You know what I mean? Especially in this climate.
Yeah, so he's my mentor, Corey Allen. So I had met him through, I had a summer job through my high school, Boston Collegiate. One of my other mentors, Keith Love, he passed away a couple years ago. Rest in peace. He was the principal at Tech Boston Academy. So he had a program for the summer where he took a lot of black men and many different schools around Boston. And then he brought us together, and then we just worked over the summer, whether there was physical work, we would go clean up Dorchester High,
Okay.
and we'd go to different schools around there and help clean up stuff. And then he'll take us on like different type of field trips. And he was like a real father. And then like Corey is the uncle, and Mr. Love is the dad.
All right.
So it's just like having those two black men like in my life when I was like 15, 16, trying to really figure out. Without them, I don't know where I'd be.
Wow. And that was inspirational, right? I mean, because those are stories that we don't necessarily hear in the community when we see the violence and all that other stuff going on, that there are other black men who are doing this type of work behind the scenes, right?
You know what? That first pillar, education, has to be right. He had an opportunity to have a strong individual, another male that looked like him, that he identified with, that was able to be influential in his life at a very young age where it really mattered. And he was able to not redirect out of the school to prison pipeline. So that, black teachers matter, man.
They absolutely do.
All cultural, because you got children going from schools at all cultures, and, if they're young Latino teachers matter to them. Like, they need to see someone like them in the school, and that's really important.
That's a fact. That is definitely a fact. And so, and this will be my last question, I promise, right?
Oh, okay. Pick up my notes.
Okay. So, given your experience, I mean, you got to say, what's your position? Because I don't think we ever got that.
Oh, I'm a legislative aide.
Okay.
So like for Rep Tyler, she does a lot of different things every single day. So like I just try to help alleviate some of the workload that she has. So
That's doing a pretty good job. He writes legislation too.
Okay.
He does all my background history work.
Okay.
Jalil has me read, and he always makes sure I'm reading. That's one thing that I could definitely give you. Always make sure that I'm reading and staying abreast to history and being aware of what the background story is. So I thank you for your service, and I appreciate having you on.
Oh, definitely.
Most definitely. Chyna, I had a question for you, right? So take this on, you guys. And Chyna, I want some legislation, right? Because now I'm going to introduce this to you first. And I've been working on this, right?
Okay.
Okay. All those years I did in prison innocently, right? As other brothers and sisters. We don't never fight for ours. We're more just like showcase right now, right? Like whoever comes home, that's the limelight. Then you fall out. Everybody get behind the next person. You know what I mean? But our movement is not sustainable that way, right? With so much going on. So my thing is saying, when I was in that prison, I went to canteen, I was taxed the whole time, right? Just like going to canteen. Every time my visitors came up there and had to, send me money or forced to buy something from their machines or whatever, right? I'm two things I'm concerned with. Why don't I got my tax money back? I'm exonerated. I'm innocent. I got all those canteen receipts. Where's my money at? Why? That's one of the things. And then the other thing is, what about my DNA? They forced me to take our DNA when they came up with that. But I'm an innocent man. I wasn't supposed to be there. Where's my DNA? I don't want it in your base. You understand? These are the type of things I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. And I, again, am very sympathetic to, anybody who happens to be wrongfully convicted or innocent in any way. There was a lot of, discrimination, even still today going on. And, particularly in the 90s and the times that, Black folks in Boston were disproportionately impacted by, violence in the city. And so I definitely sympathize with that. But one thing that I definitely will say is that we're working on, figuring out how Back in the day, we used to say 40 acres in the view for folks. I think today is how I get my brownstone and my Tesla. So we're working on it. And if you have some ideas, we can always work together to file legislation to figure out, how we can, pay it forward to folks that sacrificed their life and were innocent.
Oh, no. We're going to get back together. M's there, so that's like me being there for me, But I'm definitely going to pop down.
Okay. All right. Well,
pop down.
All right. Well, it was definitely a pleasure having y'all on.
Thank you.
And I am so glad that you took the time out your busy schedule, because I know you are busy.
My life is crazy. And you know what? Before we end, I definitely want to say welcome home.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I've been seeing you out in the community at job fairs, at community meetings, in the library, making sure you're studying, staying in touch, and you're definitely very disciplined. And so, guys, please make sure that you have a good role model out here. If you're experiencing, you're about to come home and you feel nervous, look at him. It could be done, and he's doing a great job. So, welcome home, and we look forward to continuing to support you.
Oh,
yes, that's beautiful. That's a fact. That's a fact. Chyna, it's beautiful hearing from you, my sister. It's been a while. I still got our video. I know the last bill, me and you stood up in front of the State House, right? Well, inside, actually. Yeah.
Inside and outside. But
inside and outside. Yeah. But Mac's right there on the scene, so I feel a little more confident, But I really want you, I don't know what you guys are doing to put the word out to our community. I think they're taking it lightly, but these next few weeks, just like January 6th creeps up on our community, just be mindful. We need to start putting out alerts to be mindful. Little black girls are being snatched across this country. If they can make a move on Nancy Pelosi, think about this. Make a move and get to her husband and damn near crack him in his head with a hammer, breaking his house. This is a woman that they already tried to get. That means her security was supposed to be super tight, right? We're dealing. We dealt with this in prison. We're dealing with lost souls that are not going to stop. Just so everybody understands that. Make your people understand that they're not going to stop. It's their last hurrah. So how are we going to counter that? You know what I mean? And that should be our violence message. Like, yo, you got to put all that shit on hold, because this is real, and we got to protect each other. So I hope those messages start coming out.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's not easy, and it's also your awareness.
Yeah, the real fight is like yourself, my sister. Just be safe, you and the young brother.
Yeah, will do. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so we are bringing it to a conclusion. We've been on Bump That Radio with Mac Hudson, co-hosting with my brother Darrell Jones, and we done had our honorable sister, State Rep Chynah Tyler, and her aide, my brother Jaleel.
I knew he was going to cut. He's a DJ on names. He's a name DJ. You mentioned cut your name, so I knew he was going to do it. I was waiting on it. No, go ahead, Em. Go ahead.
And it's been a wonderful pleasure having them in the house, in the building, man, and, sharing this black love and their personal messages and their insights, their great insights, man, on the many subjects that we approach today. And I'm hoping to, absolutely have them back at some point, man.
Yeah, whenever.
Okay, all right. You done heard that. Heard that. We got it live. Okay. All right. So with that, brother, go on, Darrell.